Have you ever thought about who the worst Death Eater really was? What if it wasn't the most sadistic or ruthless, but the most spineless? In today's video, you'll find out why Lucius Malfoy might be the most disgraceful servant of Voldemort. At first glance, Lucius Malfoy is the perfect aristocrat. Polished manners, expensive robes, an air of superiority. He's powerful, wealthy, and undeniably skilled in magic. Yet behind this flawless exterior lurks a man driven by fear, cowardice, and selfish ambition. Unlike Bellatrix Lestrange, who embraced Voldemort's ideology with fanatical devotion, Lucius never had the courage to fully commit. He talked big, played the part, but when real danger loomed, he scrambled to save himself. Time and time again he proved that his true allegiance was not to the Dark Lord, but to his own survival. How did he become this way? What happened to him after Voldemort's downfall? Let's take a closer look at Lucius Malfoy's path, from privilege to disgrace. Born into one of the wealthiest pure-blood families, Lucius grew up believing in his own superiority. His father, Abraxas Malfoy, was rumored to have been involved in political conspiracies, setting the stage for Lucius's obsession with power. At Hogwarts, he was an excellent student, a model Slytherin, and even became a prefect. But despite the popular assumption, he was never particularly close to Severus Snape. Snape was 6 years younger, and Lucius had little reason to associate with him. After school, Lucius eagerly joined Voldemort's ranks, drawn to the Dark Lord's power. He believed aligning himself with the strongest wizard of the age would secure his place in the magical world. Unlike other Death Eaters who openly reveled in cruelty, Lucius operated in the shadows. He used his wealth and influence to manipulate people rather than fight on the battlefield. Yet when Voldemort fell, Lucius didn't hesitate to switch sides. He claimed he had been under the Imperius curse, avoiding Azkaban and continuing his life of luxury. He married Narcissa Black, fathered Draco, and focused on expanding his political influence, bribing ministry officials rather than engaging in open warfare. This is where Lucius became even more despicable than the Death Eaters who at least remained loyal. Bellatrix never wavered. Fenrir Greyback never hid his savagery. But Lucius, he played both sides, never willing to get his hands dirty unless he was sure he could escape the consequences. His obsession with power led him to meddle in Hogwarts affairs, targeting Dumbledore and pushing his own agenda. He secretly slipped Tom Riddle's diary to Ginny Weasley, setting off a chain of events that endangered the entire school. His plan failed, and when he was caught, he was disgracefully removed from Hogwarts' Board of Governors. When Voldemort returned, Lucius found himself trapped. He had spent years denying his involvement with the Dark Lord, yet now he had no choice but to serve him again. He was given a critical mission: retrieve the prophecy from the Department of Mysteries. He failed spectacularly. Captured and imprisoned in Azkaban, he lost everything: his wealth, his status, and most importantly, Voldemort's trust. When the Dark Lord freed his captured followers, Lucius returned home a broken man. His once magnificent manor became a Death Eater headquarters, and he was no longer a powerful leader, but a disgraced servant. Voldemort humiliated him at every turn, taking his wand, stripping him of his dignity, and treating him like a worthless pawn. By the time of the Battle of Hogwarts, Lucius had no fight left in him. While others stood their ground, he abandoned the battlefield to search for Draco. His only act of defiance was fleeing, ensuring his family's survival while leaving Voldemort's forces to their doom. This final betrayal spared the Malfoys from Azkaban, but it did not redeem Lucius. Unlike Draco, who eventually grew beyond his family's toxic beliefs, Lucius never truly changed. He remained bitter, clinging to outdated ideas, even resenting the way his grandson was being raised with more tolerance. He lost his power, his influence, and worst of all, his relevance. In the end, Lucius Malfoy wasn't the most dangerous Death Eater. He wasn't the cruelest, the strongest, or even the most committed. He was something far worse, a man who spent his entire life chasing power, only to be left with nothing. The fall of Voldemort shattered the illusion of pure-blood supremacy. For centuries, families like the Malfoys ruled the wizarding world from the shadows, convinced of their superiority. But when the Dark Lord fell, they found themselves on the losing side of history. Their ideology, once a symbol of power, became a mark of disgrace. Those who had once whispered about blood purity in hushed tones now avoided the topic entirely, fearful of the consequences. Lucius Malfoy had spent his life ensuring his family remained at the top. He had bribed, manipulated, and aligned himself with the most dangerous wizard of the age, and yet, when the final battle came, he did not fight. He fled. His loyalty, so loudly proclaimed, crumbled under the weight of self-preservation. He was terrified, Draco later admitted. We all were. The Malfoys' desertion saved them from Azkaban, but it did not save them from humiliation. Narcissa Malfoy played a different game. Unlike her husband, she saw what had to be done. Her single whispered lie to Voldemort, "He is dead," was not just an act of desperation, it was survival. That moment, more than anything else, defined the future of her family. The Malfoys had chosen their side, and it was not Voldemort's. Yet even as they walked away from the battlefield, they carried the weight of their past. Other pure-blood families were not as fortunate. The Lestranges, once revered as Voldemort's most loyal followers, were wiped out. Bellatrix fell in battle, and Rodolphus was locked away, left to rot in Azkaban. Their legacy ended in chains and blood. The Carrows, too, were hunted. Amicus and Alecto, once feared for their cruelty, became fugitives in their own world. Pure blood supremacy was no longer a symbol of power, it was a curse. Some families, like the Greengrasses and the Knots, understood the shift. They kept their heads down, adapting to the new world. They abandoned their old rhetoric and focused on rebuilding. Others, like the Selwyns, refused. They clung to the past, whispering in dark corners about lost glory. But the tides had turned. No matter how deeply they buried themselves in tradition, the world no longer listened. Draco Malfoy faced a different battle. He had grown up believing he was special, destined for greatness by birthright alone. But after the war, he was just another face in a world that no longer cared about bloodlines. "I didn't want to be that person anymore," he admitted years later. He married Astoria Greengrass, a woman who refused to raise their child under the same oppressive ideals. Their son, Scorpius, grew up free from the shadows of the past, despite Lucius's protests. Lucius Malfoy never changed. He withdrew from public life, disgusted by the new world. His home, once a place of power, became a prison of his own making. He watched as the ministry reformed, as Muggle-borns took positions of influence. He watched as his grandson grew up without fear or prejudice, and he resented it. But the world had moved on, and his bitterness meant nothing. The pure-blood ideology did not disappear overnight. There were still those who believed in it, though they no longer spoke so freely. They gathered in secret, longing for the days when names like Malfoy and Black commanded respect. But their numbers dwindled. Their children, raised in a world where blood status no longer mattered, saw no reason to fight for the past. The wizarding world had changed. The old families either adapted or faded into irrelevance. The Malfoys, once among the most feared names in the magical world, became something else. Not heroes, not villains. Just another family, trying to find their place in a world they no longer controlled. Some might say they deserved worse. Others might say they had suffered enough. But one thing was certain: pure blood supremacy was dead, and Lucius Malfoy